So, welcome. I'm Marcia McNutt, President of the National Academy of Sciences, and it's my great pleasure to present the President's Address for the 155th meeting of the National Academy of Sciences. And of course, I feel this great weight in trying to represent all the wonderful work of the great staff and the volunteers of the Academy, and of course live up to the reputation of all of the presidents who have gone before me in delivering the other 154 addresses that the members have been treated to in the years that have come before. When I addressed you for the first time last year as your new president, I noted a number of worrisome issues. At that time, this new administration was off to a historically slow start in terms of appointments to the administration overall, but particularly in the science appointments. There was no NASA administrator, NOAA administrator, FDA commissioner, or USGS director, among many other empty slots. Most departments had no science advisors. So let's fast forward today. Well, there's progress, albeit slow. Not long after we last gathered, Scott Gottlieb was confirmed to lead the FDA. Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who's a former oceanographer of the Navy, was confirmed as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and is currently leading NOAA, but in an acting capacity as the top spot. Last July, Paul DeBar was appointed Undersecretary for Science at DOE, and in March of this year, Robert Redfield was appointed CDC Director. Just weeks ago, James O'Reilly was confirmed as Director of the USGS. Days ago, we got a NASA Administrator, James Bridenstine. And of course, Francis Collins at NIH and France Cordova at NSF continue their very strong leadership of these important agencies. Several other agencies, including DOE, now have strong science advisors. And I'm even hopeful we could have an announcement of a President's Science Advisor within the coming weeks. Many of these leaders in government joined two stalwart science supporters. And if I could have the first slide there. Oh, wait. Oh, I have control. Yay. There we go. Many of these leaders in government joined two stalwart science supporters, Senators Lamar Alexander from Tennessee and Chris Coons from Delaware, at an event earlier this month that was co-hosted and organized by the National Academy in the Mansfield Room of the U.S. Capitol to honor the 2017 U.S. Nobel laureates in science. We were pleased that Nobel laureates Barry Barish, Joaquin Frank, Michael Rauschbach, Kip Thorne, and Michael Young were all able to attend. Many other congressional champions of science also came to honor the laureates, including Congressman Bill Foster of Illinois and Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. Senator Markey told me that he has had a Nobel laureate from his former congressional district every year for the last 6 years. He said that actually, in 2 consecutive years, there were Nobel Prize winners from his district that were on the same street in Winchester. That was where I used to live, in Winchester, when I was in Massachusetts. Senator Coons, in his remark to the assembled group, noted that 37% of all Nobel Prizes ever awarded in the entire history of the prize have been given to U.S. citizens, even though only 4.4% of the global population is American. Less than 100 years ago, Europeans would have dominated the Nobel Prize tally. When the Nobel Foundation was asked how the U.S. was able to take over dominance, their answer was strong federal investment in basic research and a culture of academic freedom at American universities. Those are the things we have to protect. With that in mind, it's great news that champions of science in Congress on both sides of the aisle voted to approve the largest increases in research funding that I recall during my career as a scientist. In fact, budget analysts say that the 2018 budget is the highest R&D investment in inflation-adjusted dollars in U.S. history. With other nations seeking to emulate our success by raising their national investment, it's important that the U.S. step up the pace in order to remain competitive. But I don't need to explain to this audience that research dollars also need to be invested wisely. It's not just the amount, it's how we use those dollars. They have to be invested in an open, competitive system. Hence, the Academy continues to speak out in favor of the highest caliber evidence being used to guide government decisions without political interference, and that our universities continue to be able to welcome the best, the brightest students and scholars from anywhere in the world. As an example, I was joined by my other two Academy presidents, Victor Zhao from the NAM and Dan Moat from the NAE, in jointly issuing a statement to defend evidence-based advice when a CDC memo suggested that the CDC staff avoid using the term evidence-based in budget documents. We also continue to develop positive working relationships with many members of the new administration. Even though funding was stopped midway through one of our recent studies on the health impacts of surface coal mining. We recognize that risks remain, that policy will be unduly driven by short-term economic and commercial considerations. But many U.S. states and foreign nations are already demonstrating that using science to guide investment in the health of people and the environment is a boon to economic development. It does not strangle it. And of course, we continue to work closely with members of Congress in both houses and in both parties to advance science and its societal benefits. Now, returning to international issues, your council has been very concerned that negative publicity about the U.S. abroad and the perception that the U.S. government is making it more difficult for foreign scholars to study at U.S. institutions could jeopardize international scientific partnerships. We decided to be proactive in showing the National Academy's support for international science in tangible and prominent ways. With this in mind, the National Academies are now serving as the host for the Secretariat of the Inter-Academy Partnership for Research, which is called the IAPR. This is a global academy of 140 academies of science and medicine around the world, and this map shows you where they're distributed. The IAPR, much like our own NRC, mobilizes the world's leading experts from these academies to produce reports that provide scientific advice on issues that are critical to the global community. Their most recent report, which was released just in January of this past year, was on the topic of the security implications of genome editing technology. The European Academy's Science Advisory Council, the Leopoldina, and the NAS collaborated with the IAPR on this report. Our own Vice President, Diane Griffin, served on the organizing committee for the workshop that led to the report. Now let me move to communication and engagement. Many researchers, both inside the National Academy and throughout the scientific community, have expressed concern that the voice and expertise of respected authorities are being diluted in a flood of misinformation. The NAS has begun a number of initiatives to address this concern. So last year I announced that the Academy was preparing to launch a project that would bring to the public the information that is now tucked away in our consensus reports and difficult to find. The project had been, at that time, tentatively called America Asks, Science Answers. But when we asked the public what questions they had, we also decided to ask them about the name for the initiative. And these were actually some of the top polling questions that America was interested in finding the answers to. But when we asked them about the name for this initiative, America Asks Science Answers was not the top polling name. The name that won, hands down, was The Science Behind It. The reason for this name change is that people said they don't just want to know the answers to their question, they want to know how science knows those answers, the process by which science seeks the truths of nature. So we completed our list of survey questions and are creating web pages with information, graphics, and other useful materials derived from our consensus reports. The plan is to have Wikipedia editathons to ensure that this material is tagged in Wikipedia and the Academy reports are referenced. Now, if you have visited the Keck Center within the last 4 or 5 months, you may have wondered, what happened to the Koshland Science Museum? So in response to a thorough and thoughtful review of how the NAS can take the mission of the Koshland to the next level, the physical location of the museum was closed in order to reach an even larger audience through new public engagement programs that will feature targeted events in person and online. The new program is known as LabX, and it is overseen by a distinguished advisory board that is ably led by Jane Lubchenco, and that includes experts in communications, education, and unconventional ways of reaching the public. One LabX innovation, called Night Lab, is a set of community events that focus on using pop culture to make science fun. The first of these events, named Night Lab Hackology, took place at the NAS building in Washington, D.C. on March 7th. The most recent event in the series, which is shown here, Night Lab, the Hellcat Hypothesis, was the science-themed improv show that was held on April 28th at Smith Public Trust in Washington, D.C. And you can go to the web to look at what a science-based improv event is like. And this is all to appeal to young adults. The Night Lab programming will continue throughout 2018. LabX also continues to focus on engaging communities through the extreme event disaster resilience game. I had the pleasure of attending the kickoff event for the National Academy's new initiative to enable our extensive body of work on climate science impacts and response options to better inform the public and decision makers. This is called the Climate Communications Initiative. The goals of the initiative are to be able to respond rapidly to the needs of authoritative, unbiased information, to leverage our extensive body of information on climate change issues, to apply best practices in science communication in disseminating information, and to provide evidence-based understanding of climate change to advance the dialogue. I understand that there has already been a number of engagements with the Republican leadership in Congress through this initiative, which have been quite successful. There's a lot of excitement around this initiative from a variety of stakeholders, and it could be a model for communicating a number of other difficult and potentially polarizing subjects. So here are some slides from the April 7th and 8th Washington, D.C. Science and Engineering Festival. This festival took place at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center and is the largest science festival in the nation. So the picture on the left shows the National Academy booth before it opened, before anyone was allowed in the door, and on the right after people came in. And volunteers from the National Academies organized activities for a mock community that was called Decision Town. The premise of Decision Town is that children attending the festival are all citizens of this Decision Town. And they must educate themselves on issues ranging from what should be the transportation infrastructure of Decision Town, what kind of energy infrastructure should there be in Decision Town, what kind of coastal planning should they have for recreation and to ensure ecosystems are healthy in Decision Town. And then they have to cast their votes in Decision Town for their preferred option. Now, all of the activities were popular, but the one that got the most attention was Decision Town's courthouse, where the junior citizens waited 6 deep in several lines to test their memory in an exercise designed to demonstrate the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. Based on each child's performance, the child would don a judge's robe and then bang the gavel to declare the accused innocent or guilty. I think all adults should probably go through this before they become a juror. So once again, we held an open house here at the Academy on the occasion of the March for Science on April 14th. In addition to being inspired by those coming out for the march, I loved hearing all of the different reasons that non-scientists put the National Academy on their itinerary. So on the left here, festooned with cameras, is Estras Suarez, who was teaching a photography class by visiting monuments around Washington. Suarez spontaneously went into a discussion with his students on relativity as it relates to photography in the shadow of Einstein. So I looked up Suarez online, and he isn't just any old photographer. He won a Pulitzer in 2014 while he was working for the Boston Globe for his images of the Boston Marathon bombing. So open houses can be great places to widen our circle of friends. I also wanted to mention a long-running program begun by my predecessor, Ralph Cicerone, because at so many of our regional meetings we've had around the country, we found that this initiative is not as well known as it could be among the members. The purpose of the Science and Entertainment Exchange is to leverage the power of popular entertainment to influence audience perceptions of science and scientists. So we're trying to change the perception that this is what scientists look like. So since its inception in 2008, the exchange has facilitated more than 2,300 technical consults, held 25 events, tours, and high-level retreats that inspire new characters and storylines. NAS members regularly contribute as consultants and event presenters. And here are some of the examples of prominent popular series and movies that have benefited from consulting with the exchange. So, for example, you wouldn't think like The Good Wife and maybe, well, you would think probably Person of Interest and Big Bang Theory, but some of these others, most recently, the Black Panther, which was a huge box office success, was, in fact, In the Black Panther, there's a reference in the closing scene of the film which pays homage to the Science and Entertainment Exchange because they were so grateful for the help on that film. So let me move on to new initiatives. While all these communication and outreach activities are important to bolster public understanding and support for science, and they also increase recognition of the National Academy's role in providing trust in scientific information, a major focus has been improving on how the National Academy operates. So last year, I initiated, as one of my first major actions as your new president, a review of the National Research Council, the operating arm of the National Academies, which is responsible for the reports and convening activities by which the three academies provide the scientific advice to the government and also many other stakeholders. This external review was undertaken with full support and concurrence of Dan Mote and Victor Zhao, the other two academy presidents. The review was timely for a number of reasons. The first was that following the establishment of the NAM as an official academy, being elevated from an institute, and integration into the NRC of its advisory programs, all three academies are now fully invested in the NRC's success. This is the first time in history that we really could do a comprehensive review of the NRC. Second, there were past internal reviews of the NRC by academies, members and staff, whose important recommendations for more effective operations had never been implemented for a variety of reasons. This external review was conducted by a committee of the National Academy of Public Administration called NAPA that included both NAPA fellows and academy members. Cherry Murray represented the NAS. The review resulted in recommendations to improve the operations of the NRC, many which reinforced the suggestions from those earlier reviews. So here are the suggestions for modernizing the NRC organization. For example, consolidate administrative functions in finance, information technology and communication, establish a line management structure so that, for example, people that are in finance in the divisions actually report to finance people, not to scientists, invest in staff development, and improve contracting practices. The panel also made suggestions for strengthening timeliness and efficiency in our studies. So impose more rigorous project management, apply risk-based management strategies, strengthening quality assurance and ensuring continuous improvement. Right now, they pointed out we're so risk-averse that it is really hampering our study process. Pilot alternative consensus study products. We've jumped right on that one, and improve sponsor communication. We're so hands-off in our sponsor communications that sometimes we deliver products that are not at all what the sponsor is thinking they're paying for. So our goal in this effort, these recommendations are now being implemented under the guidance of the three presidents and the governing board. Our goal in this effort is to ensure that we remain relevant in a rapidly evolving policy environment, providing advice that is both timely and fully grounded in scientific evidence. The work of our volunteers and staff is less useful when decisions must be made before our process can produce the products that inform policymakers. A report that is delivered too late is really not useful. Our volunteer committee members will benefit from both shorter time commitments and consistent administrative processes. Now let me move on to another new initiative. While the focus of the NAPA review was how we are conducting our work at the NRC, we are already thinking about working across the traditional disciplinary boundaries. As a first foray, the National Academy launched an initiative to address the complex issues associated with how the environment affects human health. This initiative, called Environment Health Matters Initiative, has engaged all divisions of the NRC to assemble expertise across the institution, including environmental, medical, social science, physical sciences, and engineering. The advisory committee involves leaders from government, industry, and academia to explore the latest science, identify promising solutions, and create innovative pathways towards improving environmental health. I'm personally very excited about this cross-cutting effort, as I view the Academy's ability to work nimbly across all the divisions in the future as providing relevant advice to the nation very critical. And this really works perfectly with the NAPA report, because the NAPA report is going to lower those internal administrative barriers to working across the divisions. And that's going to enable the science that will then easily work across these barriers. So I'm very excited about this. Now, speaking of advice to the nation, let me close with some thumbnails of a few recent reports. So following Katrina, TV and radio emergency warnings were judged woefully inadequate and had been overtaken by technology developed within the private sector. A proliferation of new alert and warning systems are reaching at-risk populations via smartphones and social media channels. For example, when my daughter's father-in-law was missing in action in the British West Indies during Hurricane Maria, I used Facebook's safety check to ultimately find him. So government needs to integrate their emergency warnings with these evolving systems. Applications like Waze are already providing traffic hazard alerts, and emergency managers could use applications like this to provide information about best evacuation routes. So we had a report on emergency alert and warning systems shown here that sets new goals for a national alert and warning system that better integrates public and private communication mechanisms and sources of information, and enabling new technologies to be adopted more quickly. It also sets the agenda for socio-technical research to inform the evolution of these technologies. Now, perhaps of immediate interest to this audience is, I think many Academy members may have seen a just-released report with the short title, Breaking Through, that was requested by Congress that addresses concerns expressed by students, postdocs, and young professionals about their diminishing prospects for successful careers that match their training. The committee that was chaired by Johns Hopkins President Ron Daniels was asked to advise how to provide better career guidance and support broader exposure to career-relevant research experience and improved access to independent research grant awards while limiting long-term postdoc positions in the biomedical and behavioral sciences. NAS members Nancy Andrews, John Boothroyd, Judith Kimball, and NAM members Story Landis and Joan Reed served on the committee. A few of the specific recommendations are shown here on this next slide. They include establishing a council to confront the challenges facing the next generation of researchers, improving data collection, training, and mentorship, and funding for postdocs and early career researchers, and promoting innovative policies. Another highly publicized Academy's report considered the pros and cons of e-cigarettes. The committee concluded that because they contain fewer toxins and lower concentrations of toxic substances than e-cigarettes, they are less harmful than conventional cigarettes. For adults who are already smokers, e-cigarettes are a better alternative and may help them quit, although long-term health impacts have yet to be assessed. The main concern with e-cigarettes is their use among adults, for whom they may be a gateway to smoking cigarettes. Smoking has been on the decline in America for about 50 years, and therefore the committee's concern is that it would be a tragedy in America to reverse those current gains. Another important report is this one that was chaired by our NAS Public Welfare Medalist, Norm Augustine, on making medicines affordable. This important study tackled the high cost of drugs in the U.S. The report concludes that the pharmaceutical industry has delivered effective treatments for improving health and fighting or managing disease. The cost is unsustainable, however, equaling 18% of the nation's gross domestic product. The report recommends the accelerated entry of generics into the market, greater application of government purchasing power, more transparency in pharmaceutical finances and supply chains, improvement in insurance benefits to mitigate drug costs to consumers, and better alignment of incentives and outcomes of existing programs with their intended goals. Now, I'd also like to mention 3 other reports soon to be released that should be of interest to all of the members. The first is due out next week, and it evaluates the benefits of integrating the humanities and arts with the STEM M, where the last M is medicine, fields into higher education. A second is on reshaping graduate STEM education in the 21st century, and that's tentatively going to be released just after Memorial Day. And the third is on sexual harassment in science and engineering and medicine disciplines in academia, scheduled for release in mid-June. This one was the topic of our Women in Science luncheon yesterday, where there was a very lively discussion on the topic. Finally, just a few final comments in closing. Last year at this time, we announced that our very generous friends at the Kavli Foundation provided a gift, which propelled us forward in our goal to match the Simons Challenge for the Ralph and Carol Cicerone Fund. I am very happy to tell you that we are now that was a $10 million challenge for the Academy. We are now within $500,000 of meeting that $10 million challenge, and thus within $1 million of adding an additional $20 million to the Academy's endowment. So all of those wonderful programs I talked to you about, LabX and the science behind it, and all the other wonderful things we can do with that $20 million, we are within $1 million of doing it and within $500,000 of raising the challenge. Many members have been extremely generous. And for those of you who have not made a gift this year, gifts received or even pledges received, I understand, even if you make a pledge over time, the pledge counts. Before May 31st, we'll produce a 1-to-1 match from the Simons Foundation and will help us achieve that goal. So now's the time. Make a pledge. Yes, yay. Okay. Also, with the support of your hardworking officers here at the Academy, we completed 14 regional meetings this past academic year. And in the past 2 years, the officers and I, along with Ken Fulton and Bruce Darling, and usually with Michael Murphy from the Development Office, we visited a total of 25 institutions in 19 cities around the country. And then in that process, we had the potential to reach 75% of the Academy membership if you all had been able to show up. Now, we understand that people are on travel and sabbatical and have, teaching commitments. But I think it's amazing that in the past year, we had the potential to actually visit with 75% of the Academy membership in your hometowns, at your home institutions, to talk to you about what's important to you and talk to you about all these important initiatives. So, first of all, I want to tell you personally how much I've enjoyed these meetings. They've been a wonderful opportunity to get to know the members across the NAS sections, to hear your thoughts about what you see as the challenges of facing the Academy. What are our opportunities? How we can best fulfill our missions. We've heard you about what's working well, about what's not working well. This is a time for change here. And we're going to make these changes. We're going to make the Academy work better. Lots of great ideas came through these meetings for improving membership processes, informing this NRC transformation, taking our outreach efforts to the next level. I want to thank all of you who took the time to attend these meetings because they really helped accelerate my orientation into this new job. But above all, I came away with such a strong sense of commitment to the importance of science in informing good decisions, and such a strong sense of your commitment to our mission. You all demonstrate that commitment by volunteering for Academy committees, by nominating new members to help further our mission, and by donating to our annual fund. Thank you, and I look forward to another strong year for the Academy. Thank you.